Speaker, our last question is, are bond forfeitures a problem in Troup County? And if so, what can be done to correct the problem?
Bond forfeitures have been an issue in Troup County. What we are doing to address the problem is making sure that the old bond forfeitures back to 2005, through which the FIFAs are put, are being collected, and the money's being turned into the county as it should. Bond forfeiture procedure is somewhat of an issue. It started out that the judge's office did the bond forfeiture procedure. Then it moved to the solicitor's office doing the bond forfeiture procedure. Then it moved to the clerk's office doing the bond forfeiture procedure. We have found some problems with that. What we are doing to try to make sure that these problems are worked out is trying to communicate as best we can between agencies. But sometimes that is difficult and you hit some bumps in the road. The best thing we can do from this point forward is to watch, be careful, make sure things go correctly. There are a lot of issues with bond forfeitures, probably too long to go into in much more detail than that. But I will say that at this point, it appears that everything is being done in the county to collect the bonds as they should be. The issue is making sure that we're all on the same page and that we are all working together.
With this question, I really don't have a lot to talk on because not being in the solicitor's office, I really have nothing to do with bond forfeitures or deal with bond forfeitures. But all I can say is I think Sheriff Turner's probably doing a good job getting those in. But other than that, I really have nothing to add to the bond forfeiture issue. Until you get in that office and handle them on a daily basis, I just don't know whether it is or is not a problem.
We will now ask all candidates to make their closing remarks. We will begin with Mr. Shattuck and move from my left to my right. You will have 2 minutes, Mr. Shattuck.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Chamber and West Georgia Tech for putting this forum on. When I decided to run for state court solicitor, I looked at several things. The first thing, of course, being a taxpayer of Troup County, I looked at the budget. In 2004, prior to Ms. Baker taking office, the solicitor's budget was $250,000. This year, her budget is $423,000. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a 70% increase in her budget. Meanwhile, the caseload has remained essentially the same since 2004. In these difficult times, as you've heard all these individuals talk about, with budget deficits, there's no justification for a 70% increase in your budget. The second thing I looked at was the dismissal rate. And I've talked about this since the beginning of my campaign. There are simply too many cases being dismissed in state court. Those are cases that could be making money for the citizens of Troup County. I know that's not the first and foremost thing the solicitor's office is supposed to do, but it is one of the things through fines and fees. If elected, I will institute a policy of attorney review of cases prior to accusation. What this will do is it will hopefully successfully prosecute more cases to the benefit of the victims and the citizens of Troup County. I also believe that this would cut down on necessary delays and continuances, which in turn will save money for Troup County citizens. The third thing I looked at were these domestic violence cases. Ms. Baker has made this the biggest issue in her office. In fact, they have 1 day per month devoted solely to domestic violence cases. What's interesting though, ladies and gentlemen, last month on that day they had 42 cases that came in court. 10 individuals pled guilty. 32 cases were dismissed. That's a 76% dismissal rate. I understand that victims are reluctant to come to court sometimes for a variety of reasons. And I certainly don't want to punish these victims by forcing them to come to court or not call 911 when they need help. But these offenders have learned that most of the time these cases get dismissed. There's no deterrent effect if they are not punished. When they move on to a new victim, I want to be there to protect them. That new victim could be your daughter, your granddaughter, or your niece. Please vote Shattuck for solicitor.
Well, first, let me say, I've heard some of the numbers Mr. Shattuck has thrown out throughout this campaign, and I'll tell you they're just plain wrong. These numbers, some other numbers he said, they're just flat wrong. In terms of the budget, let me tell you this. In 2004, I wasn't the solicitor. There was some local legislation put in place. I took office in 2005. The budget increased in 2005 because the local legislation made my position full-time. The only increase in my budget having to do with personnel was when I asked for a part-time solicitor to become a full-time solicitor. That increased our efficiency greatly. And by the way, when that happened, the revenue for state court also went up. So if you were a business, you wouldn't look at that as, you'd look at that as a no-brainer, frankly. The issue of attorney review is a specious argument. We've been doing attorney review for years. That's how we go about looking through our cases. Officers spend less time in court today than they did 8 years ago. I can tell you that for a fact. That saves taxpayers money. I've been the solicitor for 8 years. I prosecute misdemeanors. I am under budget every single year. In fact, my budget has been relatively the same for the last 4 years. We take new measures, we put them in place, and we save the taxpayers money. My job is to do the right thing every single day. That has to do with my discretion. How do you know you can trust my discretion? I'm going to do something that I really don't do very often, and that's tell you about myself and my family for a minute. I was raised by a mother, pretty much by herself, with my 2 brothers. She was a teacher. My 2 brothers were younger than I was. I went to college on scholarship. I went to law school on scholarship. My second brother went off to the University of Georgia and joined the Marines without telling my mother. That's not the wisest thing to do, by the way, not to tell your mother first. He ended up graduating. My brother Judson, who's here in the audience tonight, is a lieutenant commander in the Navy. I am proud of my family's military service. I am proud of my husband and his public service. And if you elect me again as Solicitor General, you will be proud of my service.